If a coworker is stealing your food and you address the problem by putting something in it that makes the thief sick, can you be prosecuted for that? I found this on Quora, and I thought it was too good not to post here. Original question: if a coworker is stealing your food and you address the problem by putting something in it that makes the thief sick, can you be prosecuted for that? What if you put your name on it and leave a do not eat note? Author, Gwerdine Behar. Many years ago, the early 70s, my dad came home complaining that someone was drinking the iced sweet tea he took for lunch. He's getting ready to eat and half would be gone. He didn't know if they were using a cup or drinking straight from the thermos, and considering the group he worked with, he wasn't going to take any risks. This left him with only water for lunch. This happened several times and he finally decided to do something about it. He went to the pharmacy and asked for the strongest laxative they had. The pharmacist asked why he wanted one that's strong, and my dad explained the situation. The pharmacist, an older gentleman that had been running the store most of his life, told my dad that it was a bad idea since it could cause dehydration and other problems. Instead, he handed my dad a bottle labeled essence of peppermint and told him to use the entire bottle in the thermos. He also told my dad that if anyone asked what was in the tea to just say don't worry about it. This was truthful. He said that drinking the entire bottle would only settle your stomach if you had indigestion, and nothing more. The next day, he took the spiked tea to work. Sure enough, at lunch, he found the spiked tea had been tapped again. He recapped it, remarked that he'd soon know who took the tea, and finished his lunch. A few minutes later, a coworker came to him holding his stomach, demanding to know what was in the tea. He just said, "Don't worry about it." Shortly after that, the coworker left work sick. Soon, his wife called and asked my dad what was in the tea. Her husband was moaning that he was in pain and had been poisoned. My dad told her what was in it, and told her to call the pharmacist and verify that it was harmless. She was laughing too hard to even say goodbye as she hung up the phone. Now to the comments. At some point it's just a case of the thief being stupid. Seriously. How do you not notice the tea all of a sudden tasting like peppermint patty's puss? Peppermint iced tea does not sound that good. I once spiked my sandwich with one of those insanely hot sauces to battle a similar situation. At least with this method you can't even be accused of intentionally spiking the dish, you can just pretend you like it spicy. Pretend? Essence of peppermint, ha ha ha. What happens when you ingest too much essence of peppermint? Indigestion. Source: a pharmacist. Why do people do this? If it's not yours, don't ducking touch it. I can't get my head in the moron who thinks it's okay. Especially a thermos? Isn't anyone afraid of cold sores or backwash? Satisfying, very satisfying. I've already seen another story about the exact same situation on here. Now I know where they got that from. That is great, a lesson learned. If there's one lesson I've learned, it's never eat or drink another person's food. Probably shouldn't need to be a learned lesson, just don't steal people's food. That is also true, I'm just saying, be wary of what's in another's food. So, the takeaway is to spike food that will likely be stolen, but make sure it can't be traced back to you. Got it? You could kill them or put them in the hospital, with no permanent damage. Have to be careful to put just enough to get them in the hospital with no permanent damage without killing them. Great story. One quick question to clarify what you wrote. Did you mean to write that drinking the entire bottle of essence of peppermint settles your stomach? Settles usually means it calms it down. Did you mean to say it agitates it and causes indigestion? It's confusing when reading it as written. The peppermint settles your stomach if you have indigestion. I used to have it as a kid. And if you don't? Does it give you indigestion? You can be prosecuted, or at least held civilly liable, aka sued, in some areas even in America, if the neighbor's kids break into your backyard and drown, if your fence wasn't tall enough. I suspect that there are cases in which you could at least be sued successfully for tainting your own food, and maybe even held criminally liable. I think there is another legal concept that could come into play, which is related to the expectation that a coworker would eat your food. And so, for example, if you knew your coworker had a peanut allergy and that he often stole your food, you might be prosecuted for putting peanuts in your food. But if you didn't expect anyone to take your food, you couldn't be prosecuted. Like if you're aware of the neighbor kids often breaking into your backyard, you're more liable for harm that they encounter in your backyard than if you didn't know they often broke into your backyard. This is a tangentially related legal advice thread where lawyers chime in on this topic. Ew, yeah, it looks like you can easily get in big trouble over it, so legally this is a huge no-no. Morally though, I think it's a different story, since I'm a big believer in property rights, the ability of personal enforcement of those property rights, and personal responsibility. Since stealing food violates property rights, yet doesn't get above the level of crime that would make the police or even the employer get involved, it seems logical and reasonable to me that the fault of the poisoning should rest only on the thief. I think any harm that occurs to someone when violating another's property rights should be blamed on the one violating property rights, as long after they get a warning or have a reasonable expectation of harm. For example, a label saying it's poison or a warning shot when trespassing. The expectation of protection from harm encourages the thief to continue stealing and likely prevented any early lesson on why you don't steal before. Also, the punishment for stealing shouldn't be permanent effects, so using rat poison would definitely be moral. But using something that has temporary effects, like the peppermint extract, or even just a reasonable expectation of temporary effects, like a laxative, makes sense. I tell you what. One of the most pleasant poops I had was after several peppermint oil capsules. Smelled okay and the peppermint tingle was pleasant. You can't if they take your food without asking. To me that sounds like the equivalent of punching someone in the face, breaking your finger, and then suing them for the broken finger. I know that's a cliché metaphor, but it applies. Here's something that has actually happened. Guy waters lawn overnight in a fenced backyard. Thief comes to rob the house at night. Guy chases the thief out of the house and out of the backyard. During the chase, the thief trips over the garden hose and breaks his arm. Thief then sued Guy for medical expenses and wins. For some reason sugar-free things like gummy bears and cough drops act as a laxative because there's something in them anyways. If you know a dick, then buy a bag of sugar-free gummy bears on Amazon. Then read the reviews because they'll make you cackle. Leave them out for them and pay back. A few minutes later a coworker came to him holding his stomach demanding to know what was in the tea. Soon, his wife called and asked my dad what was in the tea. Her husband was moaning that he was in pain and had been poisoned. I don't know what is more surprising. The fact that this guy had the audacity, and pettiness, of taking something from his coworker for a long time without asking or even paying for the inconvenience, or the fact that he didn't realize that he gave away that he was the thief. Duck every single cunt that steals someone else's lunch. What the actual duck? What kind of person does that? Take your own lunch or buy something. What is the thought process here? I am fine with whatever you spike your lunch with if it gets stolen. Pieces of shit deserve whatever the duck happens to them. Oh no, I'm allergic to peanuts / shellfish / gluten / too many laxatives / rat poison / etc. Then eat your own ducking lunch, dipshit. Helping you pick the right poison. Such a pharmacist thing to do, haha. The underrated heroes of medicine.